Okay, Jake, what I want to do real quickly is just talk about the things that I see coming in, okay? Number one, coming into camp, I think your feet are too wide in your stance. And I know you're trying to get space between the legs. You got big legs packed with muscle, but the problem you've got with it is it's really not benefiting you as much as you'd like it to, because notice that your knees are kind of collapsed in. I'm exaggerating for effect. So while you have a wide foot stance, you don't really have any more clearance between the knees than you would with a more fundamentally sound stance, number one. Number two, without having those feet up and under you, you're somewhat compromising your balance, your leverage, your mobility, your power, all the things you need to be effective on the football field and fundamentally sound. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so the first thing I want to do probably is I want to bring those feet in just a little bit, but then I also want to rotate the heels inward a little bit, all right? Get the toes maybe slightly outward. If you don't like that, let me know. But we find it works for a lot of guys for a stable base, number one, on the balls of the feet. Number two, it really helps them channel that leg drive back into the hips so we can capture that lower body motion energy and put it into the snap, all right? And then the other thing I want you to do is when you sit down into the snap, or into the stance, go ahead and just push the knees out over the toes a little bit. That's going to give you a lot more space between the legs without necessarily taking your stance wider. We talked earlier about the fact that not having those feet up and under you can cause a lot of problems. It can make it hard to sit down. It can create tension in the hip flexors. It can make your leg drive too vertical so you can't capture that energy and channel it into the snap. And also, you know, if you lack mobility after the snap, you're beat. So we have to address that, okay? The other things that we saw coming in is you're doing what we call a frog squat. And we've talked about the shoulders to hip slope relationship, okay? The upper and lower body meet. They form an arrow point. We want energy to channel down the spine, up the legs into the hips so that those energies combine and converge in an arrow point that just happens to be pointed straight at our target or directed straight at the target. If your arrow points down at the ground, which is what we call a frog squat, where the hips are lower than the shoulders, your arrow's pointed straight down into the ground. So one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to snap it into the ground, or like you're going to be shifting your aiming point on the fly. You're going to be trying to aim while you're in motion. Now imagine riding backwards on a horse at full gallop and trying to shoot an arrow versus a guy standing here with a stable base and lining up with a bow and trying to hit his target. He's going to be a lot more successful in general, right? Unless he's part of the Mongol hordes in the 1400s. They were specially trained, I guess. But you get the point, right? Okay, so essentially that's one issue there. Also being frog squatty, your knee bend's too deep. It's beyond 90 degrees, not fundamentally sound. It won't be as quick and explosive as you unwind the legs, okay? Third of all, that makes you kind of flat-footed when you frog squat, which means that about the only way your leg drive can go is straight up. Again, not capturing motion energy because it's not directed back towards our target a little bit, all right? And then finally, it makes you tall on the front. It takes you very far away from the ball. So your arm extension becomes extreme and you create tightness and tension and locked out joints on the front end in the worst case. We could notice that on your film with the shoulders kind of being bowed down as you're reaching out to try and get a hold of that football, okay? So essentially what we need to do, and let me grab your chart here, okay? Another way to say that when you're far from the ball is you're kind of overextended downfield. You're really not when you're frogging, but you are overextended because of the way you're setting up. It's not that the ball's too far out in front of you, but you're just too far away from the football. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's what we want to do. I want to take you from here. I want to unbend the legs and lower the front end just a touch, and then I want to shove your weight forward a bit or around until I can get your knees positioned directly over the toes. I want your shoulders to hip slope angle to be fairly horizontal so that everything is lined and guided so that during the motion all the energy is going to travel back and directly towards your target. Does that all make sense? Okay. First thing let's do, let's bring you on camera. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say one other thing. Because of that setup and the stiffness here, you're throw hitching because you got to bend the arms before you can actually throw it back. So we need to relax that tension, maybe flatten the ball a little, and then also try to pull through with the elbows and try to practice a bit, just pulling the ball through your legs from point A to point B, like here to a yard behind you, okay? Want to get used to that, just smooth scoop and throw. Go ahead and set up real quickly. I'm going to three-step you and try to get you all set up just ideally, okay? You ready? Okay. I'm going to pull you forward. That gets your knee bend to 90 degrees or less, straightens the back, and extends the arms. I'm going to raise you up, maximizing operating room under your torso. Then I'm going to push you back into the hips towards your target till the heels touch the ground, knees are over the toes, you're solid on your feet. How does that feel? Less tension on the front, You still want to be well extended, but just not tight. Give it a good hard throw. Very nice. Okay, let's toss the ball in here. Now, we're a little off target there. I'm not going to worry about that right now. You tend to have a bias, maybe it's by habit, of wanting to have those hips slightly lower than the shoulders, okay? Generally, we want to make you horizontal to the ground, shoulders to hip. But I have seen a couple guys that are slightly deeper on the back end. It's been very effective for them. So I'm not going to obsess on textbook perfection. I'm going to focus on what's going to give Jake the best results. Okay, go ahead and set up one more time. Okay, so essentially you were frog squatting. You were high on the front end, low on the back end, tense on the front end, and flat-footed, too deep. So we unbent the legs, okay? We shifted your weight forward to get the knees over the toes, and then we settled you down on the front just a little bit to take the tension away. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and give it a good hard throw. Awesome, how's it feel? Much more directionality of leg drive back into the hips. A perfect setup will lead to a perfect snap, which is what that was, because everything travels where it should, which is directly back towards your target. You have any questions on that?
No, sir.
Okay. Overall, I think that looks really good. I want you to stick around so we can do a couple power drills and some hill things and stuff, but that's essentially what you need to be working on right now. Let's do one more snap, see if we can get you just absolutely textbook perfect in your setup. And I think, like I said, from what I've seen and from habit, being a little deeper on the back end is probably going to be better for you than trying to make you absolutely straight, horizontal, okay?
Gotcha.
Feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we do need to work on not picking the ball up. One thing you might want to try as well would be to uncock the wrist slightly, and then again, like try to pull through from the elbows as you come through. Let's try that and see what happens. Much better. Now, you kind of end up on your heels because you popped up, but that's okay. Another thing you can do, get a 14-inch square cardboard box or something, set the ball inside of it, and snap from inside the box. That'll help you because you'll figure out when you're picking it up versus scooping it down and through. And we can spend a little time talking about a couple other ideas as well. Okay, good job. Let's go.